Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? This is Kaustubh Pandya. I'm a partner here at Brick and Mortar Ventures, and I am absolutely thrilled for the panel today. For those of you who don't know, Brick and Mortar Ventures is a early stage venture capital firm. We invest in technologies for the built worlds, going from design, construction, all the way to operations and management across all verticals. What I'm thrilled about is the panel today, both from a technology provider and a customer perspective. So with Bibhrajit, who is a founder and CEO at SafeAI, a true pioneer, Bibhrajit has started off his journey automating haul trucks at Caterpillar in mines of Australia and others, and then honed the leading edge of technology at autonomy in Ford, Apple's autonomous car program, Faraday Futures, and eventually found his way back to off-road autonomy, founding SafeAI. I'll let him do his intro because I won't be able to do justice. So go ahead, Bibhrajit.
Hey, Kaustubh, thanks to be here and really excited about this panel. So as you said, my name is Bibhrajit Halder, founder and CEO of SafeAI. And I have been doing autonomy for almost over 20 years now. The way I say, unless autonomy is still excited, otherwise I'll probably go do something else like cryptocurrency. So I started off my career with DARPA Grand Challenge when autonomy just got started in US. I was doing my PhD in autonomy, had a great opportunity to work at Caterpillar, where we automated the whole mining truck and deployed it in Australia. Learned a ton about how to take a complex technology in real production. Then obviously around 2015, the self-driving car picked up. I was at Ford in Silicon Valley, as you mentioned, at Faraday Future, at Apple. Really saw the tremendous progress in the autonomy technology, if you will. About 2017, we realized that the amount of progress autonomy has done as a technology hasn't gone into this heavy industry in the construction, the mining, and that's really the trigger point we started SafeAI. So really looking forward to discussing further on that.
Fantastic. And joining us from the other side is Keith. Keith is the Chief Innovation Officer at Bechtel, one of the largest EPCs. And Keith has seen it all, starting from field engineer, from project to project, and eventually making the corporate ranks. And I personally enjoyed notes with Keith across many technologies, automation, including one of them. So I'll let Keith do his intro as well.
Thanks for the introduction. Really happy to be here today. I'm Keith Churchill. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Bechtel. I started out in the field, worked about 15 years in the field before I even stepped foot in the office. Have worked in various roles in operations, innovation out of our Welding and Applied Technology Center that's located in Houston. Recently relocated to Reston to take over this role and position, and over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, being involved in the innovation and technology aspect of the business has kind of opened my eyes to everything that's possible. And I really see construction as one of those avenues that's going to really elevate as far as an industry in the coming years. And really excited for this panel to talk about autonomy, and really looking forward to the discussion today. So thanks for the opportunity.
Fantastic. But let's start a little bit high level. And I think what I want to start with is just some broad ecosystem trends. So what are some of the broad trends that you see driving the future of construction, and how does automation play into it? And start with Keith or Bibhrajit, and feel free to chime in.
Yeah.
You go ahead, Bibhrajit.
Yeah, so I think one thing I'm come from the technology world, right? Just to kind of give you a sense that really the excitement what I see right now is that how the confluence of technology and this industry is coming up. So if I kind of touch upon a couple of things, we talk about automation, but really broadly, can we make this industry, this construction industry, much more connected and efficient? So we see that construction industry being more connected, more data driven, and more autonomous, right? And what will give it to the industry is a huge amount of safety improvement, productivity, and efficiency. I think that's just that is really a tipping point of that. That's a one broad level. If you see another thing, we'll see that because of the use of data, there is an end-to-end efficiency. Like how do we plan to, how do we deploy? There is a connectedness you will see. I think that's also going to fundamentally change this industry the way we see that.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the convergence of technology is happening at just about the right time, especially to support where we're seeing sort of the levels of skilled labor going across the world. As we see the amount of personnel that are entering the trades continue to dwindle, there's going to be a need for certain types of technology to augment the worker and to remove sort of the I guess repetitive and sort of I guess lower level sorts of tasks, so that the skilled labor force can really focus on those things that they're experts in, and not have to deal with paperwork type tasks or menial type tasks that really don't provide a lot of value. We want to get the most bang for our dollar, or for our buck, as we're moving into this new realm. And the ability to connect with the worker, the ability to have visibility into the project, the ability to process that sort of on the edge, is really going to benefit us and really help us take the next step as an industry.
No, that's thrilling. That's exciting. I'm actually curious from you. You all have both been, in the industry for such a long time, so you've seen it go through a pretty interesting journey over the last few years. And I want to make a comment on the typical, stereotypical statement that industry has often been called a laggard when it comes to productivity, when it comes to technology adoption. Now, I definitely have my own personal opinions on it and some pockets of excellence, but both as a customer and provider of technology, I'm curious, how would you guys respond to that statement, and how true does it ring for you all?
Maybe I started off with a little bit because of the background, right? Because that's kind of one of my favorite things. Just to give you some tidbit, when you think about autonomous technology, heavy industry adopted autonomous technology before anybody. One thing I say, right, there was a Caterpillar has an autonomous truck back in 1995. And they were autonomous truck running on their backyard. Most of the people obviously don't know. Think about how early they were at their time, right? Having autonomous truck running in 1995. So that just to set the stage. So what I seen it, right? Being in mining industry for about 7 years, I have seen autonomous technology actually give the complete safety, productivity, and production back in 2014. Just to give you some context, right? There's about 1,000 trucks running today with a 24/7, it moved about 5 billion tons of material. So I would not consider this industry to be laggard. I actually, as a technology provider, I look at it we should give this industry a technology that actually useful. They can use it today and not actually hinder their current job. So I think this industry is absolutely ready for adoption. The burden is on us as a technology provider, provide a solution that actually works and actually makes their work life better. So I'm actually more optimistic than the traditional statement you make. They're laggard. They're absolutely ahead of the curve when it comes to automation in general.
Yeah, and I mean, overall, the industry has sort of set itself up to be, to be named that, and I think, the fact that we have the ability to really take a huge step forward, and it is going to be, extremely significant moving forward. I would say that, having the technology in 1995, but now we're finally seeing things that are being adopted, they're being scaled. There are clients out there that are forward thinking in the fact that, yeah, we want to use drones. Yeah, we want to use autonomous technology. Yes, we understand the value. And the industry is starting to really adapt to that. And I think that the new generation of worker is going to expect it. And so we're at sort of a point of inflection of is it a nice to have, or is it a requirement to do business? And I think we're going to step over that threshold here very shortly.
Yeah, I think both of your statements are pretty interesting, particularly when it comes to autonomy. I think we've seen the journey, as I would call it. Construction is a pretty challenging space to automate or do anything in, to be frank. But seeing the foundational technologies evolve to a point that now you're building and seeing the customer appetite pull the technology into the space, I think that's pretty exciting. Nonetheless, automation in our space is a pretty ambitious goal. We are typically data denied, data constrained. It's a dynamic environment. You might have walls, you might have things that are moving day to day. It's not a static environment. I would want to start from the other side and say, what are some of the challenges that you see today, or even foresee in the future, as you see the adoption of automation technology scale?
I mean, first of all, for me, we've got to start designing structures that have autonomous installation in mind, right? So we can't. I don't think it's prudent for us to go with our traditional designs and say, yes, we're going to install this with some sort of piece of autonomous equipment. I think that we've got to start from day one and say, these are the types of equipment that we're going to use. These are the types of robotics that we envision on this project, and tailor the design in order to facilitate those types of installation activities. I think that that's going to be sort of the first step. And then I think that from a safety perspective, and Bibhrajit can probably expand on this a little bit further, we've got to rethink how we align ourselves on the project to accommodate autonomous equipment, update our training, update our knowledge base, really become more comfortable working in and around robotics, to allow for the adoption of that at scale.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Keith said, right? That it is a fundamentally kind of new design thinking how we do construction, and it is not just so I think that design thinking is very important. One of the fundamental fact of any technology, any new technology to kind of introduce and scale is that you find a use case that is actually can be used immediately, and then you scale up from there. So we have the same thing in the construction. When you think about construction, you have thinking about very messy, very a lot of dynamic thing going on, right? But if you look at broadly as a construction, think about infrastructure construction. You're building a dam, building a bridge. Those type of construction is actually have a lot of repetitive, it's a year-long, multi-year-long project and keep going on, right? Those are just perfect ground for autonomy to get introduced and show value. So the way any technology can kind of adapt, if you will, you find the right use case, you deploy there, show the value to the world, you give them the ROI, and you kind of build on top of it. Also, that give us as a technology provider the real-time feedback. What is working, what is not working, and that's the critical piece, that you get the real-time feedback and you keep improving that. Just to give you, maybe just to connect that, when you think about Tesla did not do Model S or whatever they have now to start with. They had a Roadster, right? So you find the right use case where you can introduce the technology and build up for scale up. And that's really what we are planning to do too. I think that's the recipe for success to deploy any new technology, especially in the industry like construction.
Just to expand on that just really quickly, I really believe that that's the brilliant thing about autonomy, is that it's got a hard ROI at the very beginning if you find the right use case, and it's something that you can display, it's something that you can showcase very, very quickly, and people see the value very fast if it works, and if the technology does what it's supposed to do. It's something that you get away from a lot of the soft savings that a lot of technology provides, and we get into those actual cost savings and reducing the cost of projects, internally and for our customers.
So you segued us into the next question pretty well, and the ROI question. How do you think about the ROI? And robotics is on automation in general is a pretty exciting topic, because, as you mentioned, Keith, no matter how amazing the software is, it doesn't actually put work in place. This is kind of the first level of technology that we see that is directly impacting labor shortage, directly impacting the amount of work we can do. So how do you think about ROI from a technology standpoint, Bibhrajit, and from a customer standpoint? Because we are a very project-specific industry, right? You have to earn the right to have a project-specific ROI in a single project. So that may be helpful to understand as you think about automation.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I mean, it's from an ROI perspective, there's a lot of advantages here from the use of autonomy. One is that, like I said earlier, we're seeing dwindling workforce levels, across the world, especially in the skilled labor category. So, I think that the ability for some of these robotics to take some of those roles, take some of, and really augment the workforce that's out there is a significant part of the ROI. It'll enable us to do things more quickly, I guess, in a more predictable fashion, improving the quality on the job. And in, if we have the right training, if we have the right setup, we can also, work to improve safety by reducing at-risk hours on the project. So, it kind of sets or checks all of those boxes in terms of schedule performance, cost performance, safety, and quality at the end of the day.
Yeah, and Keith pointed out very critical point, right? I think one thing is that ROI is very clear in this, and I'll kind of give you an example that we are also deploying. So there are three clear one. One is safety. Right off the bat, the way you want to think about, you're taking human out of the unsafe zone and putting them in the safe office environment.
Yep.
And I, as I mentioned, I have been involved in the mining industry for the last 15 plus years. I have seen it in the first hand. Like I was in a mine in Australia, US, different mine. Literally, if you don't even have to think about this vehicle being in accident or anything. Just being exposed to that kind of environment, amount of dust, amount of kind of just a environment in, think about any construction site or in mine, if you will, take people out of that way. It's just immediate ROI on safety, right? And I can give you, like, if you look at the top mining company, if you will, they have deployed in the BHPs and Rios and FMGs of the world, each of their statements saying that safety just right off the bat. Second is a productivity improvement is just another thing, right? You can drive long hours, you can drive more efficiently, and more importantly, now you have the reliability. This truck is going to do, this machines are going to do exactly what is planned to do. Think about how well you can plan that way if your machine exactly that was supposed to do. So productivity improvement is just out of the chart. We'll see, I'll talk about more on that. And last thing is the efficiency. It is not just when I'm doing the work. If you can plan ahead, I know what exactly going to happen. I have this 20 machine is going to exactly do what I'm planning to do. Your planning part of efficiency goes up. So, and we are, as I mentioned, I'll give you an example. We are actually deploying into one of the mine right now, and we can see that in a real world that it is that ROI just worked out perfectly. So I think this is, as we deploy more and more, as I mentioned, finding right use case is very important. World will just adopt and accelerate the use of this thing.
That makes, and I agree here with the aspect of, ROI across all three buckets. One of the lessons we learned in our journey in autonomy is what you mentioned, Bibhrajit. It's not necessarily about automating a task. Yes, dull, dirty, dangerous is automating a task, and that's immediate ROI. The productive ROI actually comes not necessarily just from that task or even that truck or that equipment, but maybe the mindset of the job site. And one of the lessons was it's not about automating the entire job site. So this was a solar farm example where they were primarily, going back and forth for installing solar panels. But the productivity didn't come from simply just taking the operator out and giving a better, predictable scope of delivery of panels. But the entire process became a drumbeat for the entire crew. So there's a crew that has automation that may not be fully, I would say, at the same speed as the original driver, but because it became a drumbeat, at the end of the day, they installed more than the crew that didn't have automation. So that was an example where we saw it's not necessarily just, we often look at ROI so small in a task or even the equipment focused, but when you real ROI is coming at a much global level. And I think just measuring or having a line of sight to that definitely helped, open our eyes for what it means to automate an entire job site. It's not easy. Bibhrajit, I want to come back to what you mentioned earlier, which is, the Tesla example with the Roadster. So how do you find, and Keith, you as well, right? How do you find those use cases or the stakeholders on the other side that are willing to be the customer of the Roadster? I'm not looking for the mature solution that's going to game day ready and deliver Model 3 or S, but I am willing to be a development partner almost in the early stages.
Yeah, I mean, from our point, it's pretty straightforward, right? We're sipped into this thing for 20 years, right? We almost have parameters. When you look at a use case, we say, okay, does that hit this parameter? If it doesn't, so there are two things, right? Maturity of technology, because maturity of technology, if you think about one dimension, as the technology mature, you can cover more use case, right? Yep. We exactly know what's the maturity of technology today that can go into production, right? Not in a research way. Now, we know where that is. Now we say, okay, what are the things has to happen for a project to fit that? So something like it has to have a repeatability and time. If it is a 2-month project, 3-month project, or 4-month project, doesn't quite cut, because you need to have some infrastructure set up for it to do. So think about a project that say anywhere from 9 to 12-month project that has a repeatability, if you, in a way that something is getting done again and again, the repeatability is there. Human machine being together, that is fine, that use case. And I'll give you one use case we are deploying. We are deploying in a dam building project. It is a 3-year project. The truck, dozer, loader continuously do a dance for about a year. Truck brings the material, dump it, dozer goes, kind of lay it out, and the roller goes roll it out. Perfect for autonomy, right? So I think those are some of our parameter, right? Is it long enough? Is it repetitive enough? Is it, your human interaction? Is it how complex it is? Then we use it. So you can use it in a various construction use case, query use case. So those are some of the parameter that we see.
Yeah, when we're really looking at solutions, I mean, I think that they sort of originate from two sides of the fence. I think that there's a company that's looking at a use case that maybe we hadn't considered yet, and they've presented us the UK use case, and we interact with our projects very closely and our business lines really closely to understand what their priorities are. And depending on the maturity of the solution, we interact with them, we discuss the solution. We talk about the investment that it might take to partner with a company that's developing a solution, and really it comes down to the ROI and how it I guess differentiates us against our competition. So that's something that we really consider significantly from that side of the fence. From the other side of the fence, we have a lot of times where a project will come to us and they're having an issue. Maybe it's a safety problem, maybe it's a quality issue, and they say, hey, listen, we've got this problem. Can you help us find the technology to go solve it? And a lot of times there's existing technology that's out there that just needs to be repurposed, either in our industry or other industries. And so keeping kind of a pulse of what's going on across industries is really important to helping us understand what the best, I guess, most viable solution that we can leverage on our projects would be. And we have, several success stories where that's occurred. And, I think that it's a testament not only to the advancements that we're making internally, but also to the advancements of the industry and the technology providers as a whole, because they're starting to expand, they're starting to get that baseline. And we might say, hey, can we do this? Outside of what your normal use case is, and helping us understand, the level of investment and the level of effort to get to that next step really is critical for us to being able to adopt new technology in this space.
Keith, when you're looking at projects to deploy, I'm curious, kind of for autonomy, what are some of the internal steps that you go through? Like, hey, this is something I'm going to proof of concept, pilot, and then eventually deploy in a project, or like, hey, the project itself is the proof of concept. So just deploy straight in a kind of constrained environment there.
It really depends on the solution, and it depends on the project. Our preferred method is to really try to pilot it, and we call it a prototype, but really test it at a facility, that we can mimic sort of construction in the construction environment with. And that way we can say, theoretically, does this work? What are the things that we've noticed just in this small test? How do we rectify those issues before we take it to a project? And I think that the reason that we prefer to do that is because the personnel at the project, the people at the project, their time is valuable, and we tend to get a lot of different solutions coming our way, and so we want to make sure that we take the most valuable, most vetted technologies to the field to actually try and pilot in the field, the ones that we feel like have the most probability of being successful.
Gotcha. Super helpful. I'm curious about one topic that we touched upon briefly, which is safety. So yes, we are all driven for taking the operator out of an unsafe condition, but on a global level of safety, where I will be engaging in a mixed environment, I will be putting an automation or a technology that may not be fully mature to a point and iterating in live. How do you think about safety? And I know, Bibhrajit, you have safe in the name, so I'm sure there is personal reasons there. But yeah, that would be helpful.
I mean, I can start off and probably, but I think there are a couple of points on the safety, right? I'll start off with some of the statistics. Easier to kind of set the stage up is that in this mining industry, right, there is as I keep saying, they have run for last 7 years about 1,000 trucks. They moved about 5 billion tons of material without a single fatal accident. If you look at mining for that long, that is just unheard of in a manned environment, right? So I think the people, the way thinking that autonomy is actually is it safe enough, is actually very other way. And let me put another statement out. Let's say 50 to 60 or 100 years from now on, when people will look back to us, it's like, how come these people didn't use autonomy before? So it's not like autonomy will become so safe that it will be a question to the people that how come we didn't use that. So it's really more other way than you thinking. And the third point is that what you mentioned is correct, right? Is that technology is ready for all the use cases? That is not true, right? We have and that's why we put, and our name is SafeAI also point of view, we take safety very critically, right? We only deploy something we consider 100% to be, we are confident that it is safe. We are, every time we work with any customer. So it's really, again, going back to the use case, we'll deploy where we are confident in safety 100%, that's a paramount, and then we expand that bubble. But I want to that's why I started off, like, I want to think people in the other way. It's actually autonomous and connected site will give you safety at a level that you will wonder why we didn't use it before.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think that where we're at today is, we're in this kind of transition period, and so we're selecting use cases where we can control sort of the safety parameters and the personnel entering and exiting the areas where the robots or the autonomous equipment are working to an extent that allows us to have that additional layer of safety. I think in the future we'll be collaborating with robots. We'll be working side by side in a more dynamic nature. You mentioned that this is a dynamic industry, and I think that if we follow sort of that 80-20 rule, at the end of the day, the robots could be doing a lot that help augment the worker, and then we just gain the productivity and gain from the safety benefits of having that robot or autonomous piece of equipment with us as we're doing whatever task that it is that we've been assigned to do.
Yep. And I think from I'll put a little bit of investor perspective on this. When we think about safety, especially when it comes to autonomy, right? As a startup investor, the safety aspect will make or break the company, right? It's not like, hey, I had a fatality or XYZ incident. It's not, I won't win the next project because it impacts my win rate of some kind. It's, you have something like that, it will kill the company, at least as a startup investor. When I'm thinking about investing in autonomy technologies. The second part that comes to mind is the approach to safety. We've seen a few approaches. One is, I am going to do this in an isolated environment. So I am fencing off, I'm making sure nobody's around, I'm able to do this safely just because I have nobody else to essentially interact with. And that's a unique task that is plenty, that fits the kind of conditions of success as Bibhrajit you were talking about earlier. The second one I've seen is I have to go into the mixed environments from get-go. Right? I will have to just go in and make sure, because the use case I'm interested in, Halder is a great example, I'm not going to be able to automate every single truck on the mine site. There will be trucks that are not automated. There will be equipment that's not automated. So you're by definition getting into a mixed environment that has a very different level of safety that you're trying to engage, because isolation is not a lever that you can rely on. So that I think has been pretty interesting of where I've seen autonomy approach safety, and I think both are valid in today's world because there's enough meat on the bone on both those use cases to survive and scale. And eventually, I think they will cross paths where it comes down to whether or not it's on a job site or not. But thrilled to kind of see the talent that you see come into this space. Bring me to one of the questions I would have about kind of the future. I think you mentioned Bibhrajit already. What would the future look like? Let's say in 5 to 10 years, and more personally, what are you all doing to get it there?
That's right. So one thing maybe I'll again put some number around it, right? One of the example we worked with one of the construction companies that let's say take a typical construction project, a 5-year, let's say $100 million, total cost of the project. You will, with autonomy and connected site, you can get the job done. Let's say about $75 million. So 25% if you're saving, and in 4 years, right? Which is 20% of the time saving. What does that mean? If you kind of take that one number and kind of broaden up in the macro level, that means as a whole, humanity as a whole, we will build faster with less resource. And if you look at the world, we need that, right? If you look at across the world, we need to build faster at a less resource. That's really what the future is going, that we can keep developing that. And I think that's an amazing future, right? Instead of spending that money, spending less money and actually building faster. And you mentioned another thing, that what is technology bringing, what we are doing. Obviously, we are doing our part to accelerate that journey. Because one of the things you mentioned, that even just to piggyback on your last comment, is that what you think about safety. We, from get-go, we do mixed environment. Why? Because this is not 2005 anymore. I think this is what I mean. We know what the technology maturity is. This is not 2005. This is not 1995. This is 2022. We are on the day one, we can be in a mixed environment. Technology maturity at a point, I think a lot of people don't understand, is that it's an amazingly high point. Just to look at from the self-driving world, they have spent about $80+ billion into this industry. What happened to technology when you put that kind of money? Technology just matured the heck out of it. So that's one thing, right? I think what we are doing is to accelerate that future, if you will. Another good point, I think Keith was mentioning, there's a labor shortage, right? But there is another angle to the labor shortage. And I go to some of the university on the construction class and other or whatnot, that how do you attract this new generation of people to come to this industry? Because construction of tomorrow is not what you think about construction of today, right? So I was actually, I was at one of the class at Berkeley, and I was giving a talk, and the idea was that how do you attract this next generation to this industry? Because you need them. You need the next generation innovation and thinking to bring them. And the way you bring to this industry is that technology. When I was giving the talk at Berkeley, and I was like, see, what is this new technology doing to this industry? And we need you guys to kind of carry that forward. And that is really right. We want to attract the next generation, and technology is the best way to attract them. They are not looking at the construction the same lens as 30 years ago, 50 years ago. It's a very exciting area. They are thinking, what can I do with the technology? Again, that's I take it our responsibility to kind of motivate the next generation to come to this industry, if you will.
I couldn't agree more with the fact that if we start to adopt this technology, it's going to start to attract a different generation of workforce, and I think it's something that we've really struggled to get over that hump with. I think that what I see in the next 5 years is I really see more and more of this autonomous equipment augmenting what we're doing on the job site. I see more and more companies adopting the technology that's needed from an infrastructure perspective in order to support this type of technology. I think that kind of needs to happen in terms of understanding what sort of data that you need to ingest from the design documents. How do you manage the information flow from design to construction equipment and then back? I think that feedback loop is extremely important, and Bibhrajit hit on that earlier. I think that as we start to see more and more, dense communication systems, we're seeing 5G edge computing really take off, especially in North America and in Europe. I think that as we see that expand and we see the latency reduce, we're going to be able to go more and more complicated, in terms of the tasks that we're looking at. And so we are really taking a look at those applications and really trying to establish the infrastructure now, understand the ways that we need to start to look at data internally and ingest data and integrate between our software applications in order to more seamlessly provide the information to the autonomous pieces of equipment that we can. And then as we do that, we can just pivot really quickly to different applications as they come up from a technology standpoint, and more seamlessly integrate them into our processes and procedures as a company.
exciting future ahead. And I'll open up to the team. So to the rest of the audience, if you have questions, feel free to chime in the chat or the comments. But while they're doing that, a question or more of a lasting comment for both Keith and Bibhrajit. For those who want to be customers or early customers of autonomy, Keith, any lessons learned or any words of wisdom based on your journey with autonomy? And I think the same question to you, Bibhrajit, as a budding entrepreneur or someone who wants to go into autonomy in construction from a startup standpoint. Any words of wisdom that way?
From my perspective, I think it's really you really need to align with your stakeholders, right? Understand where their pain points are, understand what their priorities are, look for solutions that meet those priorities, and look for those things that can get you those easy and early wins, which goes without saying in a lot of different technology adoption. But I think that especially with autonomy and something that we're sort of uncomfortable with as an industry, I think that getting over that hump and being from a safety perspective is really the first step. And then being able to deploy something that says, hey, we went and did this. We went and proved out the technology. We identified these KPIs. We tracked those, and these were the results. And we're showing a positive ROI at the end of the day. That can get the momentum rolling within the company. And as other projects start to see what successes that you're having, it really starts to expand quickly. And I think that's something that I think really is amazing about this technology, because it does work and it does have that ROI.
Yeah, and I think one of the things for us, the way I say it, right, as a technology provider, as a startup, we have to have the mentality where we cannot say that, oh, here is this amazing thing we have built, you go figure out how to use it, right?
Yep.
The ability to really work closely with the customer, right? It's a question of what is the solution problem you're trying to solve, and we will work together. And again, I'll give you a bottom up. One of our customers is Obayashi, which is, we publicly discussed that, is that we've been working with them from day one. And one thing I say, again, going back to this thing, I was blown away by the alignment of vision they had. It is almost like 3 years ago, right? I think that is very critical, that we are aligned with the vision, we see the future together, and then really jointly working together. This is not something the world is like ready, I can go and buy it. This is like, let's build it together, let's take it to the future. So as a startup, as a technology provider, our job is to really closely work with the customer. And every time I go, and Obayashi being an example, I'm actually blown away by their innovation, by their willingness and the vision to the future. Going back to your original comment that this industry is laggard, I don't see that. I know we literally are deploying one in Australia, one in Japan, one in US. Everywhere I see such an amount of collaboration and openness and jointly working together. So another thing I think I will say for technology provider, for us, like, be very open and transparent. Exactly what's the capability of a technology, what can be done. One thing you don't want to do, going back to the original point, that you don't want to give them a science gizmo just because you can. You really want to get, this is a building it together. So I think that's the lesson from our point, that really work closely with the customer and solve their problem, not sell your cool technology, if you will.
Gotcha. And I know we're almost out of time. We had one last question, but I think it segues really nicely into the next panel. We talked about heavy equipment and large-scale mining construction applications. What about kind of the building scale use cases? So stay tuned for the next panel, which is mostly focused on that one. So looking forward to hearing more from Alice, who actually helped put all these panels together quite a bit. So thrilled, and very much looking forward to seeing Keith and Bibhrajit on the autonomy front. Thank you again for everybody.
Thank you, Kaustubh.
Thank you so much.